Welcome to the Biota Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Gerald de Jong. Gerald, it has been, I was looking at my notes, 8.5 years since we last talked in a recording. But one of the highlights, actually, I found of doing the Biota Podcast was we went for a walk, right? You came for a box lunch and we went for a walk in Los Gatos sometime.
Yeah, that was the summer of 2015.
Such a wonderful opportunity to meet someone who I'd spent so many hours over many years recording audio with. Let's for listeners who last heard from you when you were working on Tetragotchi, what has gone on in the past 8.5 years? How has artificial life changed in your own thinking? What are you working on currently?
There were a number of years there where I was doing a project with several other people in the cultural heritage domain, and that was sort of all encompassing. It ended up sort of occupying all of my time. It was only recently that I got some time to get back to that kind of work, and this time around I found the most incredible technologies to get the job done in WebAssembly and WebGL. So it was exciting to be able to sort of revisit the stuff that I did before. I had to completely rewrite it, of course. But, I suddenly was able to just put it on a web page. Whereas before, deployment or, getting it out there was always difficult.
So what is your language of choice now?
Yeah, well, for this project, it turned out to be TypeScript end to end, including the code that's written to create WebAssembly. So it's like end to end to end.
For folks listening,
no, I was quite surprised. I was quite surprised that the TypeScript was able to do that on all fronts quite nicely.
For folks listening in, you have a YouTube channel. When does the project actually officially launch? And can you introduce the project?
Yeah, I've been sort of carefully soft launching a little bit here and there because I haven't been able to dedicate much time to it lately. My work has been taking up too much time. But no, it's a project to bring together two heroes of mine, Darwin and Fuller. So the more I started looking at it, it was like, what am I actually doing here? It's kind of a work of art in a way, but I want to bring together Darwin and Fuller, and so I'm sort of using like the structural metaphor that was such a favorite for Fuller, and creating a Darwinistic environment in which sort of Fulleristic structures compete with each other.
So when I announced that I was restarting the Biota Podcast, a gentleman who I associated with Model Rail Radio came forward and said to me, when are you going to get on that tensegrity fellow again? And I said, interesting. And can you get him to actually give a solid definition for what a tensegrity is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Actually, that, if I were to be honest, that will be sort of the next direction I go when I get Galapagotchi working, is to explore tensegrity more using this technology. Because so tensegrity is a really simple thing. It's a structural principle. The idea is that the structure gets its integrity from the tension. So that means that any sort of thing that's not in tension, it's compressing instead, is localized. So you get a certain behavior, and it's like you get sort of the most bang for your buck structurally, because tension is much easier to create sort of in with carbon fibers and things like that. You can really get a tension to weight ratio is really amazing. So it's just a structural principle. So you can theoretically build large structures with it, but I've always loved it just as a way to imagine space in a way. It's a way to define space, because the only way that you can occupy space is to grow one of these tensegrities. So if it doesn't have a reference frame, and it doesn't really need a reference frame. Anyway, maybe I'm getting a little too weird.
I always like the metaphor of it's kind of metaphor for musculature as well, right? There's an element of musculature in there.
The core of Galapagotchi is that the unit you have to think of, the operating unit, is actually just the interval. It extends from one point to another, and over time it has a desire to get longer and then get shorter and then get longer and then get shorter. So it sort of flexes like a muscle. So that's the unit. And one of these sort of funny-looking creatures is a whole constellation of those units, and they don't know anything about each other. And in the evolution process, their decision is when do I pull and when do I push, and that's all they know. So there's a certain, and that's where the mutation happens at that level. There's a distance between where the mutation happens and where the evaluation of fitness happens. You know what I mean by that? Does that make sense?
Certainly. However, I've also followed your work for many years, so you may be preaching to the choir. Let's talk a little bit about Galapagotchi, because certainly when folks are taught about, I follow this because I meet generations worth of developers through my work. And what interested me was the transition of teaching evolutionary algorithms with the notion of Galapagos Islands like evolution. So evolutionary algorithms are now taught, I think, pretty generally with this notion of, dividing evolutionary algorithms to find peaks within very small areas and then expanding it accordingly. So that's just now part of the evolutionary algorithm vernacular. What you're trying to do with Galapagotchi, from my understanding, is have a series of these isolated environments, grow tensegrity structures in these environments, and then are they eventually going to mate and mutate with their neighbors? I mean, what aspect of this has that additional point of evolution?
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, the structures that I'm using in Galapagotchi are not tensegrities yet. That will be like a future version.
So what's the distinction?
The distinction is here you've got basically springs. So every element is a spring, so it periodically pushes and pulls. Whereas in tensegrity, you've got a whole different system where there's a sort of a basic tension and the roles are sort of predestined.
Okay, let's explore that for a minute.
Oh, okay. This is pretty weird getting into spatial structure. But if you're into it, that's fine with me.
Let's get into it. I've understood that we have a certain group of listeners that genuinely like this kind of exploration. Let's do this thing, Gerald. So one is a spring, which I guess is relaxed for a period of time. I'm just trying to see the distinction between kind of musculature movement and tension and spring. A spring is relaxed if it's at its currently desired length. And its desired length changes over time. Hence its behavior like a muscle. And it doesn't know anything about the world. It doesn't know to which body it belongs. It knows absolutely nothing. And its behavior is directly mutated. So there's sort of no way to reach the world where fitness happens, and that is how fast does the creature run? Like what does an individual muscle know about how fast the creature is running? So spring to tensegrity is the tensegrity is under tension. And the role of pushing or pulling is sort of strictly defined. If you want to get into it, it's essentially this. The things that push do not touch each other. That's the beginning and the end of the story right there. So the awareness was something that you made a point about with regards to the spring. The tensegrity also, or does it have force awareness of the tensegrities it's connected to? Is that the point that you're making with the tensegrity?
Wait a second. Let's not get things confused here. You were asking about tensegrity, which is a kind of structure I'm not using yet.
I understand. But with the spring, you said that there's no awareness that the spring has.
Yeah, the spring doesn't know where it is or what it's doing. It's just following sort of basic instructions like at this moment I'm pulling and at this moment I'm pushing, or at least my desired length
certainly
goes up and down.
There's a tensegrity have awareness in distinction.
Tensegrity is something I haven't started with yet.
I understand. But
does it have awareness? That's a very weird question, but
well, in contrast to the spring,
it does have one interesting thing. It has, you could actually say this is a little. If you're getting all spacey on me now,
why not?
It does have a kind of holism, and this is like basically a provable thing. Because if you have a tensegrity where all the pushing elements are sort of islands, they're all fixed in their place by tension. That means the tension has to basically go from one end to the other. So it is inherently sort of one thing. And when you build these things, you realize that. That's the real thrill is actually building them. If you can build a sort of a tabletop tensegrity and stare at it for the next 5 years, that's what blows your mind. Because these things they're sort of suspended in space. Anyway, that's unrelated to Galapagotchi. Weren't we going to talk about that?
Let's talk about Galapagotchi. I'm just
Okay,
getting the definitions clear.
right.
So, Galapagotchi.
Yes, yeah. Galapagotchi is sort of a revival of a project that I did. It was almost a decade ago,
Hmm.
and it was slightly different, but it was with a completely different means. It was done with Java and with OpenGL,
Mm.
and that worked, but it was very hard to show to people because it was very hard to get deployed in a browser, and it was just no, this was a little too early for something, to make it easy to deliver. And in the meantime, something has appeared, and I also got some free time, so I started exploring WebAssembly, and I discovered that I was able to do the whole physics thing, which I had done in Java. I was able to do the whole thing, and it ran blindingly fast. So I thought, whoa, okay, so I can do the physics fast. That means, okay, what's the to this? And then I found out that when you program in WebGL with WebAssembly, what you can do is you can actually hand over entire array pointers from one to the other. So in other words, JavaScript doesn't get in the way, and that really, that was a real sort of realization for me too. You can really marry these two together and get a reasonable number of frames per second. So this was all sort of new to me. It take some time to dig into these things, and I was really happy with the results that were coming out. I was kind of porting code that I had written before, but of course, in a lot of ways, I was sort of rewriting it.
Hmm.
And so I worked out a number of things that sort of simplified the scenario. And my my idea here is to initiate a project involving and more than just me. So this is very much a work in progress. And I mean, what I've basically done is created sort of evolvable little robots, and I've given them a kind of a scenario in which they're encouraged to learn or to evolve certain characteristics, and they evolve purely and very transparently by virtue of nothing but Darwin's natural selection in a specific scenario, which is, of course, when you look at it, you can see it's very Fulleresque.
So the property of the Galapagos, what makes this Galapagotchi as opposed to just a series of these things evolving in any point in space?
Well, what makes it, what makes it deserve the Galapa part is is that it actually is a demonstration of, very sort of straightforward, visible evolution by natural selection. So what happens is, you can see the genes, you can see the robots, and you can see the way they're selected, and that's actually what's an interesting part of Galapagotchi, which is in a way sort of counterproductive. On one hand, you'd like to evolve madly in the background, but on the other hand, what's it for if people looking at it don't get a clue about something new? If they don't look at it and get their epiphanies, what's it for? So in a way, I sacrificed the let's evolve as quickly as possible. Let's evolve as you could say authentically as possible. So there are a couple of liberties taken in creating these creatures, and as a result, you get to really experience the evolution sort of straightforwardly as it is. You see the mutations competing against each other, in the same space at the same time, and you see which ones sort of survive and fail. It's fascinating to watch. I think it's not really a game, at least not yet. I'm hoping for input from some people who might be able to turn it into one. But the way I see it, I've built a sort of a foundation, and I'm working with a friend actually, Elvis Furcic. It's a guy I worked with at a company, and he's an audio and a web audio sort of budding expert. So he might be participating in this, and it would be really exciting to have Galapagotchi actually make sound as well. And I'm looking for collaborators, really, people who have expertise that I don't have. So I'm looking for like front end people, especially, and whoever's interested in people who want to tweak the evolution might be interested as well.
So you have a series of these entities that are visually displayed in front of you, all at the same time, all evolving in front of you, you see...
Yeah, mutations of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them has
time
determined
cycle,
genes.
each
Yep.
large evolutionary time cycle, let's say, each lifetime for these things, you
Right.
see a bunch of similar things with certain mutations, all moving in front of you, and then selectively, one or a few of them win out, and then they are then the ones that are selected and then mutated upon to continue on.
Yes, kind of. I mean, this is what you're highlighting here, maybe accidentally, is the illusion of the phrase "survival of the fittest," because that's not the way it really works. It's the opposite. It's the double opposite, perhaps. What would you say? Demise of the weakest. That's what it should have said. Survival of the fittest it can be, you're thinking then, okay, the world leader in the 1 kilometer racing is the one who produces the next generation. Well, that's not necessarily the way it works. The way it works is all you have to do is, if the average is creeping up, then you're on your way. So the way it works in Galapagotchi is there's a sort of a reasonably visible number, somewhere in the 30s perhaps. Might be lower, maybe higher. I'm not sure exactly. But these are the sort of the mutants of each other that you see competing with each other. And each one of them has a sort of a fixed destiny. It knows exactly how to do everything by virtue of its genes, including learning how to turn left and turn right. So these are fun things for a little bit later on as soon as I have a little more time for this, I'm going to make it so that these things are sort of compelled to learn how to turn left and how to turn right. And eventually you get sort of able robots. And I'm sure there's a number of ways that this can be turned into kind of a fun game, but in a way it's kind of meditative. It's sort of like a sit back and relax and watch game more than a heavily participatory. I mean, that makes sense too. It's evolution. You got to watch it happen.
So each evolutionary time cycle, a group is subtracted and
forgotten, shall we say?
Forgotten, yes, lost in time. And,
forgotten.
And the collective remaining contribute to the next genetic.
Yeah, they are among them are the parents of the next generation. So they're just randomly chosen.
Ah, interesting. So it's randomly chosen from that, which means that as people
randomly several competitors meet their demise,
mm-hmm.
and as a result, there's some empty slots,
mm-hmm.
and these are filled randomly by choosing among the survivors. You don't necessarily want to choose the best because the bestness might be an illusion at this moment. So there's a lot of subtleties in here which are totally fun to play with when you get a little deeper. And I'm hoping to sort of build a foundation and get a few people interested and sort of build a greenhouse of thinking around this stuff. Just playing around with sort of pure Darwinistic selection, at least in the beginning, because it can be. It produces results that are sort of lifelike.
Interesting. So the aim of this is to put it online. There's no central server that exchanges the genetic information, or will there be a central server that will exchange the genetic information?
At the moment, there is, yeah.
Okay. And in terms of collaborators, are you putting it up on GitHub or something like that? I mean, how would people get involved with the source code?
It's up on GitHub right now. It's an open source project, and okay. There's a Gitter, and there's a Twitter handle, Galapagotchi,
and a YouTube channel as well.
YouTube channel, yeah, and galapagotchi@gmail.com. So I've set up a number of things. I'm sort of in preparation for sort of ramping up a bit. So this is really in early phases. I need to sort of nail a few more things, and then it kind of has to be a lot more self-explanatory. You can go right now to galapagotchi.run. And if you've got a Twitter handle, you can claim yourself a spot on the island and do a little terraform.
Land grab. Interesting.
Yeah. Homesteading.
Yes.
So that's possible, although I might just toss the island that's there right now. So this is like an early phase. I was thinking, by the way, this is like an exclusive that nobody knows yet, but like in the future of Galapagotchi. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that just between you and me, okay,
Hmm.
I'm going to create 30 islands. And the reason I want to create 30 islands is because then they can be put together into one sphere, like an icosahedron. So then as soon as these 30 islands have grown a bit, then I want to make a sphere of them, make them into a planet.
Mm.
That's just the future.
Very good. So here's a trick I learnt from this very podcast. We had a gentleman on called Anton Mikhailov, and I'm sure we'll have him back on. He said, put together a Discord channel. Now I thought, what's the deal with this Discord thing? So I put together a Biota. You joined the Biota Discord channel. I put together a Noble Ape one. Also have one with Bottle Rail Radio. After about a week, I got a university student on there who's interested in Noble Ape. But then he brought in his cousin, and now, I post stuff associated with Noble Ape. Discord is interesting. And I know, actually, I was talking with Professor David Ackley. Anton did exactly the same thing for his stuff, and he's now got a group of university students that all hang out on this Discord thing. So, yeah, Discord is an interesting... I was skeptical initially because, it looks like IRC for all intents and purposes. But it is an interesting way of actually getting people kind of stuck in a discussion in some strange way. So I don't know if you'd start a Galapagotchi Discord channel based on my recommendation, but it is an interesting way of... It's kind of like flypaper. You kind of get people stuck in a very strange way.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping to just sort of swing it around enough times to create a little bit of momentum, and then sort of look for ways for the project to find a life of its own.
So if we can get a little bit more metaphysical, Gerald, it's been an interesting 8+ years. It's interesting. We kind of talked about the artificial life winter. And then I think many of us actually entered the artificial life winter in a variety of different ways. I always think of Biota podcasts like the band broke up, basically. You went to do your work. Obviously, Bruce went and did his thing. Jeffrey was doing other things. Larry Yeager, did other things. So we all kind of went in our different directions. What do you think about associated with this thing called artificial life now? What does it drum up in your mind? Do you think there's still an artificial life community? Are you still somewhat opposed to the term? What are your thoughts on this thing?
Well, it's a hard one. I don't really know, and I really never. I find it difficult to call the stuff that I make artificial life, and I'm not sure what can be called artificial life. But for me, the exciting thing is to make things lifelike, and to have the processes by which they become lifelike, the same processes that brought about biology. So for me, it's not. We're talking about simulations of some kind, and one project simulates this, and the other project simulates that, and there's a lot of things, and each project sort of can never encompass the reality of the non-artificial life because there's just a bit too complexity. There's a bit too much complexity still. The actual life is there's a lot of fractals out there. So, what we're building is sort of simulations. And as far as I'm concerned, it's interesting to see a computer do something other than it normally does. So if a computer is sort of zooming madly to solve a very strange problem, that's always nice.
So certainly when we talked, I don't know, 13 years ago now, there was a very strong political direction to a lot of the stuff that was going on. The nature of science being under assault, the nature of, evolution no longer being taught in certain American schools, these kind of things. Obviously, the rise of, certain intellectuals in this space. Things have changed so dramatically now. Maybe some would argue in no way for the better, but it seems almost surreal to think back to those golden times. Where do you see this thing philosophically in terms of what we do in a broader discussion of, where things are currently?
It's always a sort of a question of are you able to sort of broaden someone's mind when they experience what you've created? If working with it sort of makes them think new things or have an epiphany or two, and that kind of experience, if it sort of opens your eyes to something, then it's something, and that's Yeah, that's what it should do. I suppose to me it's sort of like a really didactic thing. It's like and even like self-didactic. I want it to teach me how evolution works, and it has taught me. And now I just want to make that sort of as visible as possible to anybody.
Do you think that hobbies like gardening, various kind of like animal related hobbies, I mean, do you think there are ways to see evolution working in real time other than doing these kind of simulations? What is unique about these simulations in that space? Or do you just now equate them to a variety of different things where you can see evolution in some very meaningful sense?
I mean, it all depends on your point of view. I mean, I get absolutely mesmerized by ferns because to me that's like, wow, somebody worked out this nanotechnology before I got here, and this really. This really, this is a very accomplished craftsman who did this, or at least something crafted this, and it's very fractal, and it's like there's a whole bunch of self-repeating stuff, and I just know that the reason that's there is for economy, because just in the evolutionary process you don't want to waste anything, so or at least some things you waste, but the key things you don't. So, the shape of a fern, I could just sit there and watch it and imagine the building processes somehow working out that fractal in space. That's just amazing. So, it depends on your point of view. And you can see if you were, gardening, you could probably even have a more authentic experience of evolution, but maybe not at the sort of simulated speeds that you want. Or, artificial life in general, I suppose. You're dealing with real life when you're gardening.
Well, I found with particular plants, I mean, chili peppers, tomatoes, these kind of plants, over generations, I see changes which I'm obviously selecting for. I'm the selection here in some very real sense. But it's fascinating.
Aesthetic selection.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Or spicy selection. Or, particular kinds of rotund flavor without being, overly juicy.
Well,
I mean, yes.
It's like the fact that we designed our dogs.
Very much so. But what's interesting in designing the dogs is the amount of wasted. I mean, you need a spring amount of DNA in there to actually get to the level of dog design that we've gotten. The notion that nothing is wasted, I don't see that. I think actually it's the fascinating thing is the waste that is there associated with dogs, humans, these kind of things where, yeah, I mean, waste is probably the wrong term, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, put it this way, the fern has to grow in the most efficient way possible, and it has to use, photosynthesis and the most efficiently as possible. It's not so much, waste in terms of DNA information that might be wasted or something like that, but it's the economy of the actual process. If there's a competing plant that does this more efficiently, then this particular plant is not going to be around for very long.
Unless it can make a beautiful smell or some kind of, unless the human can be the selection criteria through this, returning to gardening. So.
Not far from where I live, Tom, there's a little sort of deer park, and they have deer outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the deer sort of, they chomp on the grass all over the place, and they've chomped everything completely down. There's quite a number of them there, and kids come to visit and stuff like that. And there are patches that are completely untouched, completely. And what are they? They're poison ivy.
Mm.
So why did you develop poison ivy in your evolution process? Well, we were the only ones left standing in certain circumstances. That's simple as that.
Yes. So for folks listening in, I'm not sure if you get a sense of who the Biota podcast listening audience is, but if you were to get people interested in what you were doing for collaborative purposes, you've given the pitch with regards to the planet, but what kinds of things would be fascinating to people listening in to get them involved with Galapagotchi?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I just got it started. I mean, think of it this way. On the one hand, all of the sort of the muscles in the whole universe are all the same length at the moment. That's just one little thing. And the genetics could actually change the length. So these things could have very diverse shapes. They're not that diversely shaped right now. They're sort of built of regular tetrahedrons. And I'm just taking sort of I'm creating a sort of a minimum viable universe. There's a lot of opportunity to sort of personalize things as well, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's a lot of sort of computational work to put skins on these things, for example. And then, if you could design your own skin, or if the evolution designed the skin, that might be fun too. And yeah, I don't know. There's all sorts of opportunities to sort of make it into a competitive or collaborative process where you actually, you hang out with the people who are nearby, because that's the whole idea of this island. The thing is that if you claim a spot, which we're calling a hexalot, so it's a lot, but it's the shape of a hexagon. If you claim that, then you sort of own it. It's like a crypto coin in a way. So. And each one of them has their own pattern of land and water, and that defines its uniqueness. And they overlap each other largely. So your neighbor overlaps you almost completely. They just have a fringe and you have a fringe which are different, but otherwise all of your bits overlap. So the idea is to sort of define a space without a sort of necessary underlying coordinate system. It's the sort of the intimate overlappings of these hexagon things. It's a weird story, but it adds a little color, or it adds a certain gestalt to the Galapagotchi story, because then you've got this concept of an island where they all grow up.
What's the distinction of land and water here?
Yeah, this distinction of land and water is the simplest distinction that I could make. And that was at least at this phase in the project. So currently, as it stands, water is sort of futile. So if you fall into the water, you really won't make reasonable progress. Because I would have to sort of simulate a little bit of water physics of some kind. So you'd have to be able to sort of conceptually grab and let go, or something like that, And then you could sort of evolve your way to climbing through the water or whatever. But right now, the way it is you're effective when you're running around on land. But if you land in the water, then you're just going to tumble around until you might as well start over.
Interesting. Yeah,
but I wanted there to be a sort of a water hazard.
Well, I mean, that's certainly some way that people could get involved that have interest in water physics, and particularly simple water physics, to add to this kind of feedback loop.
Yeah, the key is simplicity, because the physics in Galapagotchi is written from the ground up in TypeScript. So it's you can actually follow from the simplest vector calculations all the way up to the evolution and the genetics. So it's kind of cool how it's transparent. So I'm hoping to have sort of a group of people get interested in how this can. Oh, another funny thing, by the way, Tom, this is hilarious. I wanted to sort of encode the genetics. So I'm thinking to myself, how should I encode the genetics? It could be anything. It could be like floating points. It could be integers. It could be characters. You can imagine. It can be anything. So then I thought to myself, what should it be? So I turned out, I decided that it was going to be dice. So because it could be anything, I made it into dice. So basically, the genes you have to think of as a sequence of dice outcomes. So like 1 to 6. And I thought to myself, why that? Well, in a way, it intuitively tells you what's happening, because you don't have to explain to anyone how these genes are built up. It's implicit that these are tosses of the dice, which I thought, hey, there's a nice little meme connection.
And over time, over time, the dice are ratcheted, I guess, in some. I mean, that's
what
mutation. Well, you have dice in an order. The mutation is just the dice rattling a little bit and 1 or 2 or 3 turning over, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. So every mutation is simply pick a bunch of random dice and give them a toss. And what the consequences of that is for the ability of the creature's body as a whole to achieve locomotion. I mean, you haven't got a clue. So that's the point.
Gerald, it has been a real pleasure to have the chance to chat with you today. As this thing continues, please come back to the Biota podcast and give updates. And certainly for folks listening in, you've given the email address, but once again, what is the email address to get in contact with you for Galapagotchi-related stuff?
Yeah, the email address would be galapagotchi@gmail.com. And you can also follow the Twitter handle Galapagotchi. And, beware, this is all very early stage. I'm not really. I mean, this is a real soft sort of launch. I can't really say that this thing is going to withstand a lot of pressure yet. So I'd like to get more participants. Also, the user experience is not quite there, and the narrative is not really clear enough yet. So I'll be working on that in the coming little while. I'm not really in a big hurry because I see this as a kind of a long-term thing.
Certainly, certainly. Thank you, Gerald, for the chance to chat today. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes. Talk later.